It's Edmonton's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
Today's guest is Chau Lui, co-owner of Paris Jewellers. Thanks for joining us today, Chau.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me this, first of all, a little bit of the company's background and history, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so Paris Jewellers is a retail jewelry brand with 25 stores in 4 provinces across Canada, and we are really passionate about celebrating our customer stories. We believe that jewelry is so much more than just something you put on. It's something that's treasured and brings you back to that special moment or milestone just every time you wear it.
So what year did it start?
In 1987.
1987, and first store in Edmonton, I presume?
Yeah, our first store is actually in St. Albert, Alberta, a tiny 400 square foot store.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit of the history of how that started?
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents immigrated from Vietnam when we were very young, just looking for a better life for our family. And when they landed in Canada, really they were just trying to make ends meet, working odd jobs while going to English as a second language classes just to learn the language. And they continued to do that, and they worked really hard, and we grew up watching that. And by sheer opportunity, they got the chance to train as goldsmiths at what is now a competitor's jewelry store, and they learned the trade. And then a couple years after that, we had the opportunity to open up in St. Albert Center in St. Albert, Alberta. It was a small 400 square foot store, and they took that opportunity and they opened that one store. So imagine a really small store at the time. There was no computers. All the tags were handwritten, and at the time they still didn't speak English, so they would take a Vietnamese English dictionary and translate with customers when they came in.
So today, how many cities are you in?
So we are in, oh my gosh, we have 25 locations in 4 provinces. I don't know how many cities we have a lot of stores in Alberta.
Okay, so fairly recently you had a couple of new things happening with Paris Jewellers. Can you talk a little bit about that? That new store in Kelowna, right?
Yes. So we just opened a new store in Kelowna in Orchard Park Mall, and then we also renovated our flagship location in West Edmonton Mall and moved into a different location. So 2 very exciting things that happened at the end of the year last year.
Okay, and so the West Edmonton store is a kind of a new concept store for you, correct?
Yes, it is a new concept store. It's a fresh new design. Really, it's a dream for us to be in that mall and to have this design moving forward as we continue to grow and open stores.
Okay, and what are your plans for the company's growth over the next few years?
That's a great question. I think for us, we're being really smart and strategic about where we open. It's not so much about footprint as it is about which community do we want to open in. Do we believe that we can do great business and really connect with the people in that city? So we do plan to continue to grow. It might not be as aggressive as we used to be, but we do have 1 store in the works this year. I can't say anything yet, but we're very excited about it.
Okay, so there's a lot of jewelry stores out there. What do you think separates what Paris Jewellers does from what all the others do?
I think that's a really great question. I think there's so many amazing jewelry companies out there. I think what makes us different is that we want to celebrate the customer story. Even though we have 25 stores, we still have that family feel where it's a very much a personal connection and not just about the merchandise you're purchasing, but really about the moment that you're celebrating. I believe that separates.
Okay, what's your vision for the company as you go forward in terms of how the company will look and be like in the next couple of years?
That's a great question. So, our vision has always been the last couple of years. We want to ensure that every single customer that comes into our store has a great experience, no matter what, regardless of who they're shopping with, which city they're in. So as we continue to grow, we just want to ensure that experience is still there and it's consistent.
Okay, what has been the toughest thing as an entrepreneur in setting up and doing this business?
There's a lot of tough things. There's a lot of challenges. When people ask me about the toughest thing, I would go back to the year of 2010. So the year of 2010 was a year where we opened 5 stores, and for us, we're a smaller company. So opening 5 stores was every 2 months in that year. We were opening a store, designing that store, getting merchandise, figuring out what works in that community. And we were really stretched thin. So that was a very challenging year for us as we continue to grow. I don't think we had the foundation to really set up our people to succeed and deliver that exceptional customer experience we expect. So I think for us, it was really to slow down and think about where do we want to open and how are we going to do it right.
Mm-hmm. So, we almost like on a daily basis these days, you're seeing news out there about retailers closing and bankruptcies and a lot of store closures, etc. How do you think the environment is out there for the retail sector and you being in that industry?
You know what? I still really believe in retail. I still really believe that there's opportunity. I think we've had to shift the way we think about retail. We've had to shift the way we do business, but we continue to focus on that customer experience because at the end of the day, you're going to hear it and you're going to read about it. People will spend more and they will choose companies again and again where they feel that they connect to a brand. So we really focus on that.
It's interesting you mentioned that customer experience because the one thing that I notice in talking to a lot of retailers, about obviously the online industry and the challenges with the economy and all that stuff, they always come back to that experience part of it as being a key going forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Over the years, you must have had a lot of people you dealt with and talked to. Do you recall any piece of advice that sticks with you as being sort of a key thing that helped you and you followed?
Yes. So I don't even remember where I heard this, but it's something that I heard that really stuck with me. And it's the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's just greener where you water it. So I find that the more effort and the more intentional effort I am putting into something, that's the area where things are going to flourish, they're going to grow, and they're going to improve. It's so easy for us to really compare and look everywhere else and say, okay, I want that, and I want to do that. But I just find where we focus our intentions is where we're going to see improvement.
Oh, okay, then. So I'm going to switch gears a bit here and ask you a few personal questions. First off, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, any thoughts of what kind of a career or profession you'd be in?
That's a really hard question. I really love what I do. I love being in this environment. I think I would find a way to work with amazing foundations such as the Children's Wish Foundation. They do such great things for our community. I think I'd really want to make a difference there.
Okay. Everybody has a bucket list these days, a personal bucket list. Do you have one? And if so, I'm just wondering what would be on top of it these days.
I do. I keep dreaming. I want to run that half marathon at Disney World. It's really been on my bucket list for a couple of years.
Oh, why is that?
I heard that it's amazing. I heard that it's a very supportive environment, and I love everything Disney. I've done a half marathon before, and I just think that environment would be so much fun, such an experience.
Okay, if you had one word to describe yourself, what would it be and why?
Okay, that's a tough one. I think resourceful. Growing up, we didn't have a lot, so I'm really used to doing things with less. So I always follow that model. You just got to do more with less.
Okay. Just in terms of personal interests, what do you do? Obviously, very successful and very busy business woman. Everybody talks these days about work-life balance, etc. How's your work-life balance these days?
So this is a struggle. I want to be totally honest. I struggle with this, and this is the answer that I'm always trying to find. But when I'm with my children, I'm really intentional about that time I have with them. I think it's quality over quantity. So if I'm with them, I am unplugged. I'm focused on them because they're the most important thing to me, in those moments.
Okay. What kind of things do you do, I guess, outside of work? Like what are kind of your hobbies, passions, etc.?
Okay, I love running. Running is just a great way. I think being active is really important. I don't know if people know this about me, but I love crafting. I actually, hand make cards for people in our company and for friends. And I do a lot of crafting with my daughters. I have 2 girls aged 5 and 7, so they love that. I spend a lot of time doing that, and I love to read.
Oh, what do you read?
You know what? I just finished The Alter Ego by Todd Herman. It was really, really great. But my favorite books that I always keep going back to is Good to Great by Jim Collins and Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the other one that he did that's really good was The 7 Highly Effective Habits of Healthy Marriages. I think that's a really, really good book too.
Okay. Do you travel a lot?
I do. Now that my kids are older, I do try to get to our stores more often. There was one year I traveled a lot. I made a commitment to get to every single one of our stores in a year. That was a lot of travel. Now we just kind of pick a province and we tour that province before Christmas, and we take our staff out to a holiday dinner. I think that's really important. But I do try to get out to the stores as much as I can.
Any particular place that you've gone to over the years that that is a favorite?
You know what? I loved opening the store in Kelowna. I found everybody in Kelowna really, really supportive and really welcoming. So I do love visiting all of our stores, but I do recall our last trip in December was to BC, and it was so wonderful. Supportive communities, great teams. I loved it.
Okay. Now, obviously, as I said, you're very busy in your career, obviously very busy with family life. Do you have a routine that you follow every day?
I really try. So this is something that I try to be really consistent with. I try to get up at 5:30. I go for a 20-minute run. If it's in the winter, it's on the treadmill. If it's during the summer, try to get outside. And then I spend just a bit of time setting my intentions and my goals for the day. And then after that, it's at 7:15. I get the kids up, ready for school, get them fed, and I'm out the door by 7:45 to do drop off.
Okay. Do you find that, you mentioned running a few times, do you find that you get inspiration and ideas when you run?
I do. There's this joke that people say that, my best ideas come from the treadmill. I just love being outside and running and clearing my head, or having a podcast or listening to that audiobook. I really find that it's so good for your mind and for your body to be active.
Okay, so I'm going to ask or present to you a scenario, okay, and get your response to it. So imagine this beautiful tropical island in the middle of the ocean. Okay, we're going to drop you off at that island by yourself, right? The island has no technology whatsoever. It has one phone booth. So you'll be able you'll be able to call us and say, hey, get me out of here, and make that one phone call. So I'm just curious, how long do you think it would take for you to make that phone call? And then secondly, like, what do you think you would be doing on that island while you were there?
Okay. I don't think I'd last very long because I'd miss my children. But you know what I'd do? I would take the longest nap that I could, because sometimes when you're running a business and you have young kids, you're very sleep deprived.
Yeah.
So I would take a nice nap on the beach, and then I would call my husband. So probably a couple hours.
Okay. One thing I forgot to ask you, you're obviously being in the jewelry business. That's a tough word to say. Do you have any special and favorite types of jewelry?
Oh gosh, I do. I have these necklaces I'm wearing today, and they're just, we got them made at the company, and they have my daughter's names on them. So I wear them most all the time. It just reminds me of them and keeps them close to me.
Okay, super then. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today, Chau, on Edmonton's podcast.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.